All right, welcome. Welcome to Monday. So a holiday here and abroad as well in the US. So markets may be a little bit quieter from a traditional perspective today, but certainly crypto is probably going to maintain the same levels that we've been seeing. Over the weekend, which has been a little bit quiet, but we certainly see some action overnight and into this morning. So we'll take a quick look across the board and kind of discuss my thoughts. We'll start off with BTC, which is where I've taken a position this morning. Taken long here. So basically I'm a big buyer of BTC in this region because I think there's a couple of things that are really important to understand and take on board here. The first of those things is, it's been fine being bearish up till now. But I think now is the time to be cautious about being bearish. Okay, the same way that I said when we were at the top, right? It's fine being bullish. It's been great being bullish, but now is the time to be a little bit more cautious. And it's exactly the same here from the bearish perspective, because we have a higher time frame bullish divergence, right? We've got that daily divergence that's developed. And we really need to be cautious when we're aggressively trying to short into a higher time frame setup that is demonstrating signs of bullishness. Right, so it's all well and good kind of screaming, I'm going to short every bounce. But there's a time where that has to stop. There's a time where you have to say, okay, look, it's worked so far throughout the last, week. Maybe this is the time that I get blown out by trying to do this. And that's the time I'm trying to take advantage of to get on the long side. So when we look at the higher time frame setup, we can see here that we've got this divergence here, which is a pretty aggressive divergence. 3 lower lows here, or 2 lower lows, and the 2 higher lows here in RSI, and we look like we're getting the confirmation of that today. Now, if I wanted to be ultra conservative, I could wait until the close today in order to take a position. However, I kind of like positioning into this nice and early and coming in here. Now, what I've done with this is been a little bit more conservative in terms of where I'm taking profit. All right, so that's one of the ways that I'm managing this position, is I'm being a little bit more conservative in the areas that I'm taking profit. And so what you'll see here, if we go down to this 4 hour, is you will see first take profit here at the first resistance region. All right, this first resistance region at 40,000. And then the second take profit region somewhere towards this 45, 46k. Now I want to be relatively fluid when I manage this trade, because I think if conditions are good, then I can probably squeeze an extra 10% out of this trade. And if my entry is safe down here, then I want to think about how I can do that versus, just closing sort of robotically at this level. So for now, I think, first thing is get above the resistance. We've got one area of resistance that we're also kind of in at the moment, which is around this 37k. So we're basically looking for flips the whole way up. Right? That's what we're looking for. So we've got a level through here as well. So what we're looking for is break through this, tap into this 38k, come back down, retest, cool off here. Right, send it to take profit 1. Right, cool off underneath here, up. Right, and this. This is the sort of play out we're looking for. So we're looking for each of these levels to flip each time. So we want to see us, push through, retest, push through, retest, push through, right, and then hit target. So that's the plan. I think people are overly bearish when the higher time frame now represents an opportunity to be long. That's what I feel personally about this situation. I feel as though the higher time frame represents the opportunity to be long, and I feel as though that's what we should be focused on here. So that for me is kind of the priority of what I'm looking for. So that's BTC. I hope the coverage of that is fine. One other thing, I guess, just to mention is the makeup of the RSI. So we can see on the hourly, we're kind of pushing higher. We're pushing through this midpoint and looking at traveling into our overbought region, which is a really good sign from BTC's perspective. Right, that's really good. That's really what we want to see. You can also see here on the 4 hour that we've got plenty of room to move to the upside. So again, when we're taking long positions like this, what I want to see is I want to see that the RSI is not already extended. So I want to see that the RSI on the 4 hour, for example, is not already up here, because if it is, that's a concern for me. Because how much juice is there left in the tank if we're already trading in this region of RSI? There's not a huge amount. We've already probably extended quite a heavy move in order to get up here. So what I want to see is I want to see RSI somewhere like this. I either want to see it crossing the 50 or around the 50 level, because then I know what we have is we have the ability for this. We've got the ability for RSI to make a full rotation higher and lots of momentum to hopefully come for BTC. So we can see on the 12 hour, we know we've got that divergence down there and with the daily. So we're in really good positions on these. And now we just need to wait and see what the reaction is intraday here. Now lower time frame, and this is something I mentioned, you may be underwater if you enter this position or you don't care about it. A couple of things to note. If you're entering a position like this, you either set your risk up front, so you say, look, I'm gonna risk 2% of my account here, or 3% or 4% or 5%, whatever you're choosing that is, and you just enter the position, you walk away, and it's as simple as that, right? That's how it's supposed to work. You take your entry, you set your risk, and you go. Now, if you want to try and be trickier about this and try and nuance your entry, right, you're going to be looking at lower time frame. And your lower time frame is pretty extended at the moment. So we've got quite a strong extension here on the lower time frame. However, we're also just kind of grinding higher. So this is the difficulty with lower time frame entries, is what happens is you look at something like this and you can see that you get a quick sell-off here. But during this time, what you may be thinking is, I'm going to look at entering long, right? Maybe if we get back down to here, I'll look at entering long. And then what happens is BTC pulls down a few candles and then shoots higher. And now you're in a position where if you would have just taken entry over here, you would now be in profit and just comfortably in position. But now we're trading higher, so you have the same thought process again of, I'll try and catch a move lower, but maybe I'll try and catch one here. Okay, and then if we sell off again and we don't quite make it, we shoot higher, then you're in the same position. So what happens is when we have the lower time frame that starts to extend like this, there's no guarantee that we won't do this and then consolidate here to cool off and then do this, in which case you've missed out all the way. So you've just got to be very careful when you're trying to kind of get fancy and take those different entry points on the chart. Right? You got to be very, very careful about that, because it can very often be kind of a poor situation to find yourself in by looking at the lower time frames to try and figure out your entry when we're extending, rather than just setting your risk, defining your risk, taking your entry, walking away from the PC and going and doing something else with your time. Okay, so other areas of the market. Sol looking very, very good today. Nice and healthy and strong. The picture is pretty similar for ETH and alts, right? Which is that we're holding on to the low. So we're holding on to a higher low on most alts and ETH. And that's the really nice picture that we're seeing developing on there. So we're seeing, Sol, Serum, all of these, everything pretty much. I can go through, it doesn't have to be the Sol ecosystem, it can be everything in this list, is pretty much holding on to a higher low on the higher time frame charts here, and we're looking at making a push higher. So Sol is in really good shape here. Really nice move for the day, 13% up. I think Sol is something that's, a pretty attractive position to move into if you're looking at playing one of these alt bounces here. We can see again 4-hour RSI pushing past this 50 point, showing lots of momentum to the upside. Looks in a really, really nice position. Same with Serum. Right, so Serum is also holding on to the low here, down at 470. And the daily as well, we can see also holding on to the low very, very nicely. So Serum is another one as well that, is in a pretty nice position to be thinking about positioning into. Today feels as though this is the start of either a bounce period that we're going to see, or certainly the start of something that is going to provide a little bit of relief from a bullish perspective. So, I would be relatively comfortable in terms of moving around in this region, in terms of, what we're seeing intraday at the moment. I think this is a relatively comfortable spot to be thinking about how you want to try and play these things. Okay. DeFi as a whole, again, looking strong. Now, this is where I want to position. Now, I got fucked on Aave, which is really, really unfortunate. Because I closed the position once we got the daily close below here, and immediately we recovered and carried on. So, a big pain in the dick from my perspective that that's what the play out was, but at the same time, I'll just have to wait on this now. Again, my expectation for DeFi as a whole is very much a long-term play, so I'm not too worried about the intraday movements within here, right? We've got 3 days of action. That doesn't really bother me if my play out is the next 6 to 12 months. So this action doesn't bother me. Shame that it happened, right? But again, I had to make the decision I did because of the significance of this level and the potential for not receiving a bounce on BTC, etc. So pleased that I made the decision, but unfortunate that it worked out in the way that it did. With that said, there's a play on SNX that I really like here. Now, SNX is very, very unusual in this region. So first thing to say is it's breaking through this region here at the 1230s, which is a nice lower time frame resistance break. So we can see at the moment we're 1 hour off closing through this area. So really, really nice start for SNX here. But the reason that it's unusual is that we're actually diverging quite high up on RSI. Now you can see that SNX has had the ability to do this previously. So we can see through this region here and through this region here. Right, we actually start to diverge. Now the reason that I pull this out, and it's slightly longer than we would look at by default. Right, we've just about got under our 14 candles in this region. But we know that the price action slowed down considerably in this area here in terms of momentum for the sellers. And then we can also see exactly the same here. So we can see this situation here. Now, I never usually look for RSI divergences that form like this because they're not great. However, SNX doing this in a market-wide recovery is probably a relatively decent sign. Okay, so I like this setup. For me, this setup is really, really clean. And again, SNX has demonstrated the ability to do this. So I bought spot again on SNX. Now, what my hope for SNX spot here is that I'm just going to manage this position. Right? I've taken this on the portfolio account, so 100k. And I've just taken 7,500 to get started with. And the reason being is I would rather add higher than I would at this point. And I'm cautious about this region here on SNX. So this little cluster down here around the $8 region is something I'm cautious about. Now what I'm going to do in this example is I'm going to hold on to this position. Okay, so I'm going to hold on to this SNX position. So I don't want to be shaken out. I don't want to let the intraday price action force me to close, right, just to see a recovery on the next day. I'm aware of the level below that I think we could get to. And if we do get down to that level, then I'll take an add to the position. So that's the plan at this point. Another one is Cope, because Cope's doing something very, very similar. We can see on the daily here, Cope actually closed lower on this daily and diverged the daily, but in a very unusual spot. The 12-hour managed to hold the low. Right, so an interesting picture between those two charts. But Cope's still holding on fine. What I would suspect for Cope, and like I suspect for the majority of these, is we see some consolidation. We see some sideways for a bit of time. Balancer as well. Like, I think that this is another really good one to look at because it's very similar to SNX. So we're breaking out of the lower time frame consolidation region down here around 2950. You know, and looking at making that push to the upside from here, moving into a spot of resistance. So we've got two local regions that we can look at here. 1 and 2. You can see lower time frame resistance points. So we've got this one here and then this one here. And obviously what we'd be hoping for Balancer now is that we come back down, retest this region, and then break up. So one thing to do today for everybody that's actively charting and looking at things is make sure that you map out your levels. Make sure that you take the time to map out your levels and determine these lower time frame levels, because a lot of charts at the moment have very, very nice lower time frame levels set up. They've got very clear lower time frame resistance points that you should be looking for retests on right now. And the reason we should be looking right now is because we are anticipating kind of bullish continuation momentum here for the market. We're looking at rejecting the first resistance above us now, retesting the former resistance as support, and looking at positioning around that. And what that gives us is that gives us a nice stop. And by the way, we say here, here, right? And then we're going to take it up to the next target, which is going to be up here. Right, so it starts to give ourselves a stop, and then we can slide this stop up when we get the price action moving away. Right, we can now slide this stop up right up here. So very, very good market action, but make sure that you are aware of those support and resistance levels, because they're going to be incredibly helpful for you on days like today. They'll help you eliminate the bearishness very quickly, because you'll be able to see some of the quick turnarounds in terms of levels flipping, which means we have to be bullish. Stops you getting into that bearish mentality or being overly bearish on a recovery day. So lots of nice things that are happening in the market at the moment, lots of opportunity, and certainly it feels like to the long side being the primary focus at the moment. Alright, so I hope this video has been helpful. Any questions, as always, just shout me. Enjoy the day, everyone.